We hustle when we grind to get to where we're at. Our purpose we will find, so we gotta stay on track. Wasn't easy for no one, life is tough, we understand. No, you're the chosen one, this is all part of the plan.
It's all part of the plan and it's game time. Regardless of the struggle, man, we still grind. Always motivated, hustle, so we all rise. Minority Report, future bright, so we all shine. Let's go.
All I ever wanted was my dream. It's like you wanted ever what it seems. I want the life, you better hustle, hustle hard. You tell me I can do it, I go hard. And they gon' know I did it from the start. You want it all, you gotta hustle, hustle, hustle.
This is
The Minority Report
Movement.
Everything discussed on this podcast reflect our own personal thoughts and views and not those of the institutions we attend or other colleagues and affiliates of this podcast.
Welcome to episode 2, Not Giving Up. Please enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode of the Minority Report. We are 4 soon-to-be PAs with different backgrounds, attending different programs with different life experiences, bringing awareness to various issues that affect students on their journey to healthcare and medicine.
Hey guys, so I'm Carl Black, and I want to welcome you to the Minority Report. So today and for the next couple of episodes, we're going to do something a little different. Your host for the next few episodes will cover topics with the team while diving a little bit deeper into their own background. Yep, you get to learn a little bit more about me today. So without further ado, grab your popcorn, sit tight, let's get right into it. The topic for today is undergraduate studies. But before we tackle that, let's take a trip down memory lane. Growing up in Philadelphia, my childhood wasn't the best nor was it the worst either. I was fortunate to have both parents at home doing what they could to make a life for us. My father, he was born in South Carolina, but grew up in the streets of Philly, while my mom, she was raised in the projects here. It's crazy because I could still go to South Carolina now and see cotton fields and hear stories about that from my grandparents. My mother, she works at a hospital as a CNA and has been for over 30 years now. She would never tell me, but I know she sacrificed a lot when she had me. Very smart, kind-hearted person, the type, to get his shirt off your back. My father, too. But I know when she had me, she decided to stay where she was, job-wise, to ensure a stable income and benefits for her family. Growing up, I was the only child for a while, and then, my sister was born. We relocated to a less ideal place in Philly, but it was there where I learned the importance of having street smarts, the hustle, and the grind. My father did everything he could to keep me out the streets. I mean, ultimately did a great job, but as a young child, you still find ways to kind of get into mischief. There was a lot of pressure in my neighborhood amongst friends, and I put that in air quote friends, to not pursue college. As you get older, you really learn, how to differentiate people. Not everyone deserves to be, deserves that right to be called a friend. So at this point, I didn't know anyone personally that went to further their education. The popular thing to do was sell drugs and play sports. And, that was the culture where myself and many other people who look like me are from. It's safe to say, I know more people that are dead or locked up versus how many I know that are actually, doing well for themselves. And to say it's disappointing, it's an understatement. But early on, I knew that I didn't want to just become a statistic, a number. I wanted more. In high school, I reached out to my counselors, and to their guidance, I tried to figure out the next step. Around the same time as when my mother got sick, I can still remember she had a cerebral hemorrhage, pretty much a brain bleed, and it was scary. But in a weird way, as a result, that unknown and uncertainty in that brief time kind of fueled a desire, for me to kind of consider medicine. By this time, I had settled for one of the 2 schools I had applied to, which was 2 hours away, in the boondocks, as we like to call it. I applied to Drexel University as well, but got rejected, but we'll come back to that story a little later. This was the first time, away from home, and to be honest, it showed. I didn't understand the importance of maintaining a GPA or just the importance of it, period. I allowed myself to get distracted, pretty much just blew it my first year. Mentally and financially, I just wasn't prepared, for the next step in my life. My parents, they tried to help me as much as they could, selling a car, co-signing on loans to help me, which ultimately grew tension. I let them down, and most importantly, I let myself down. I went back home after that first year, continued a job, I had, and it was pretty much back to the drawing board. I eventually got laid off from that job, and it just kind of added to a dark time in my life. I did a lot of soul searching. I remember a friend told me this quote: "The only thing I should quit, is pretty much giving up." And that meant a lot to me because this person believed more in me maybe than I believed in myself at that point. I had no choice but to turn the not so good situation to a better one. You know how they say like there's only one place to go from here and that's up? That was pretty much the situation. As time progressed, I became a strong believer that things happen for a reason. I used this time to really figure out what I wanted in life and how I intended on making these goals happen. I enrolled in community college, and thanks to my uncle, he gave me a place to stay. I beasted it, 18 credits, straight A's. I was hungry. I still remember this biology professor, can't remember her name, but she kind of put me under her wing, sent me to Penn State, did a nanotechnology program there. Like I was in a billion-dollar lab dealing with molecules on the nano level. Like it was an amazing experience. But I was really kind of behind the scenes, working on cures and doing biomedicine. I knew I wanted to essentially be on the front lines of medicine at this point. Like I felt like I needed to do more. So what did I do? To my family's surprise, I enlisted in the army. That's another story, but I don't regret it not one bit. I spent 6 years enlisted as a combat medic. I did training in Missouri, medical training in San Antonio. It helped me financially, but it still wasn't enough. I worked all throughout college, but many bills that I incurred throughout the years kind of came back and kind of like, bite me in the. But that's one thing, they don't teach you in school, and it's a shame, financial literacy. They'll teach you trigonometry, but nothing about finances. So at this point, I had moved out when I was 17. So for me, like it wasn't no turning back. Like I couldn't, the idea of moving back with my parents, like no offense, it just wasn't no space. So, and I remember something my father instilled in me young, and that was pretty much, two men can't live under the same roof. So I always kind of took that mentality and was like, I'm just going to figure it out. So shortly after, a friend, kind of let me stay in his basement or let me rent out the basement. And I'll be honest, there was plenty of nights I'd rather sleep in my car, which I did. Between the mice, the bugs, poor plumbing, insulation, and stuff like that, it just was better, for me not to be there sometimes. And not to mention my little brother being locked up. It was rough, but I always had that mentality that there's always going to be someone, out there doing worse than you. And if you stay the course, things will get better. They say God gives the hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. I can say I'm cut like that. Made me a fighter. But we have some questions to get into. So guys, undergrad, what did you guys study in school?
I was a psychobiology major at UCLA. That's biopsychology. Other schools, basically a combination of both, psychology and biology, and basically biology undergrad, like lower divs, followed by all the upper divs are pretty much psych and neuroscience and stuff like that. Did it really prepare me for PA school? Not really. I'm kind of a strong believer that it doesn't really matter what undergrad you do. The only way to prepare yourself better for PA school is to, have a healthcare job, because you're going to learn a whole lot more over a 2-3 year span working a healthcare job than you ever will, studying for 4 years in undergrad. Unless you have something that's like healthcare related as an undergrad major.
My experience with undergrad was more so like a roller coaster. I went in thinking I wanted, pre-med, as most, people do at my university. And then after a year, I realized that maybe it wasn't for me. I had some doubts after taking some science courses, the common story. So then I started to explore other avenues. I ended up settling on law school. So I switched to political science and kind of stuck with that until my senior year. I realized that perhaps computer science offered the same thing that I liked about law school, which was the logic behind it. But I ended up graduating. It was too late at that point to switch. I ended up graduating with political science. So that's what I studied. Did it prepare me for PA school? Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, you do learn a lot of lessons that are applicable in PA school, which is to, you know, as Carl said in his really impactful story, just, stay the course and keep chugging along.
Yeah, so similar story to Carlos. I mean, I went in pre-med. I remember first day of orientation of our college. They asked, okay, how many of you want to become doctors? Pretty much 90% of the auditorium raised their hand. For me, I guess I had a little advantage in terms of I knew about the PA profession, my dad being a PA, and so I had been on the fence between pre-med, pre-PA, stuff like that. And then after taking several classes, several science classes, and also doing what I was doing on the side, which was making videos on YouTube. I became a YouTube partner, and I thought, hey, like this video stuff is taking off. I'm really more interested in this, and I wasn't doing so well in my science classes, and so I decided to switch completely, like drop the idea of a career in medicine, and so I actually became a filmmaking major at our university under the theater department filmmaking track. And there I wrote my first screenplay, did a bunch of short films, filmed for people, even did a wedding videography gig. Like a lot of doors were opening up in that realm, but it felt like something was still missing, and like I enjoyed the aspect of making something out of nothing. But again, just missing that patient interaction, that comfort of really helping other people. And so just got back into like volunteering, coaching, and stuff like that. And I like really found it, I would say, my fourth and fifth year of undergrad, to where I was like, all right, let me just graduate as this major, go do a post-bac program, and get back into the realm of medicine. Because it, like I realized the film industry, film industry in Hollywood and all that was just like super cutthroat. And even though like I started to know people and network with people, it wasn't the same, and it didn't really provide me that sense of helping add positivity into the world as I had imagined. I think I made that selfish decision to pursue that career at that time. But I mean, I'm glad I picked up those skills. It helps with my creativity, but at the same time, um, I'm glad I hopped back into this medical field.
I think it's huge, to have an outlet. I think each one of us have our own, unique outlet. For me, it's golfing. I know it's an old man sport, but I love being out there, just being outside, 4 or 5 hours, just trotting along. I don't really have to worry about school, not having to worry about, the stressors that come with it. Aaron, you got your lyrical career, you got your video making, stuff like that. Carlos, you got your workouts, you got everything else. Carl, I saw your Instagram video with you being different, what is that, Super Smash characters. We all have our own version of creative outlets, or any kind of form of outlet, and I think it's important to have that throughout your education, and even after. You don't want to be one-dimensional, where you only focus on one thing and you get stuck, and you have no way of releasing some sort of frustration, anxiety, stress, whatever it is.
I think it's important to say that regardless of the path you take, there is no correct one. You don't have to come in as a pre-med and stick with that. Even though that could be your goal eventually, if you also have a passion for, like a creative field, whether it's making films, graphic design, web development, whatever, you're also interested in, you can have that focus to kind of, develop those skills while also keeping, a list of things you need to check off to be able to get into whatever healthcare profession you ultimately want to end up working in.
Yeah, I want to add something too, and not to, you shouldn't force it, the major essentially. I went to about 5 different undergraduate colleges. And the first one, my major was business. Like I was doing pretty well running a business, and I thought that would translate well for me taking classes in business in school, but mentally I wasn't there, and it just kind of didn't cross over as I thought it would. And then fast forward, I did Penn State and the military and work with PAs and docs and things of that nature. And I said, okay, medicine. So when I went back to school, that was more so my track. So I thought I had to major in biology. I thought that made the most sense. But looking back in hindsight, could have majored in art or something like that. If that was something I really enjoyed or something I was passionate about, one, I most likely would have did much better, GPA wise. And two, as long as you know what your prerequisites are for your graduate program and stick to that, which is something else we'll get to in a minute as far as what track you need to be on, you can accomplish both tasks. So we'll segue into the next question. Being a science major while on the pre-med track, is that necessary or do you think it's a myth? So do you think it's mandatory?
Follow up what I was saying earlier. I don't think it's mandatory. I mean, if that's what, where if your passion aligns also with like your academic performance and, that's just your fit, then certainly, go that route. But as long as you get the prereqs done, and as Sada was saying, you focus more on your like personal growth, so you're not just like one dimensional on an application. I think both or several routes are equal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Carlos there. I think it's more important to study something you like rather than trying to fit into a box or, try to fulfill a checkbox. For me, I mean, I definitely made the wrong choice by being a psychobio major. Turns out I strongly dislike psychology. I don't find it interesting. It's not my cup of tea. Writing research papers, all that research aspect of it was not fun for me. And that definitely reflected on my grades. Whereas taking phi-sci classes, physiological sciences, like anatomy, physio, stuff like that, that was a lot more, my kind of thing, and I did a lot better in those classes than I ever did in any of my psych classes. So it definitely is, in my opinion, more important to, study something that you enjoy, something that you have fun doing, rather than trying to fit this pre-med mold, because I feel like this, archaic pre-med mold is really kind of falling apart now, where people are doing different majors, studying different things, and yet still being able to go on into healthcare eventually.
Sato, real quick, you did learn something as well. You learned something else about yourself, that you
Right.
don't like that field, which will help you narrow down
Right.
certain things in the future, which a lot of people kind of go in like, oh, I want to do this and a third, coming with so many ideas. But for you, it helped you kind of narrow it down,
Right,
narrow your path down a little bit.
Yeah, man. I think we're all kind of a testament to that question. You don't necessarily have to be a specific major to fall into whatever career that you want to go into. You can, as long as you do what you need to do, meet the requirements and, bring more to the table, then by all means, you can major in basket weaving. Like, doesn't even matter, I would say my major was pretty much as close to the basket weaving as you can get, bro. Like, it doesn't define you. And I feel like everybody brings their own personal experiences, whether you are a science major or not. And at the end of the day, as long as you're learning what you need to learn to do your job, then yeah, go be a basket weaver major.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room as far as undergrad. It's not cheap. It's expensive. So how do we pay for it? So I use different methods to pay for it. I didn't have a blueprint, so nor did people essentially tell me that, hey, apply for these scholarships early on, like high school and things of that nature, which I found out after the fact that majority scholarship people get in undergrad is off of high school, SATs and things of that nature. So I didn't take advantage of scholarships, unfortunately, and I was still a dependent, so I couldn't, let's say, max out on loans per se. So I still needed parents to co-sign and things like that, which was a little unheard of because, again, like my first want to go to college, like my parents were like, well, we got to take out a loan for this. Like, these loans are like car payments, car loans essentially, So I understand their frustration and, and the difficulties with that. But eventually I did have to take out a loan. And another thing I had to do was enlist in the military to try to get some extra funding and work as well. So how about you guys? How did you pay for school?
I'll go ahead and start. So you know, thankfully, I got a good amount of financial aid, but I still had to work during undergrad. Uh, Worked a couple different part-time jobs, you know, as much as I could, while trying to balance out school. So, you know, it's a little tough, but at the same time, I think it helped develop me into like it gave me a better sense of, you know, my money's worth. You know, like I had to put in X amount of hours just to make this amount of money, and this was hard work. You know what I mean? So it's like, I still spent my money on like random stuff, but at the same time, it made me realize like, hey, maybe I should save it and, you know, put it towards school or put it towards a rainy day and stuff like that. So that was that aspect, and I think it also made me try to balance out work and school a little bit better, which, you know, I think during PA school you gotta utilize your time efficiently. So the time management definitely helped kick into play, but um, aside from like working and getting financial aid and stuff, like my biggest thing is like, you know, everybody was so hung up on, oh, you got to go to this school because of the name, prestige, and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, there's so many people who came to where I'm at right now, or even further, got to their goals based off of like their own stats and own efforts, not necessarily the school that they came from. You know, there were people who came from like a community college to a Cal State who end up in the same spot as somebody who, like me, went to a UC, you know what I mean? And I think for a little while I was like prestige chasing and title chasing and name chasing and all that. But my biggest advice would be like, if it's cost efficient, go to your state school, you know? Like there's no need to go to a top notch expensive private school or prestigious school unless you know, truly want to and you have the means to be able to do it. If so, then just be ready to pay the price for it.
Yeah, I can relate to both of you guys. I also didn't have a blueprint, you know, when I was applying to you know, for scholarships or classes. It was more so relying on what my friends were doing at the time to kind of help guide me. But I was fortunate enough to get into, you know, our state school, and they basically cover. They have a policy where they cover 100% of all financial need. So I was able to graduate really with no debt and do and enroll in work study throughout my 4 years there. So that would, you know, help me have a little bit of extra money to, you know, to eat and buy whatever I needed, you know, to get through the semester. So as far as, you know, it's straining, being a strain on my parents, it wasn't financially. So I'm very fortunate for that. But at the same time, I understand the struggle of not having a blueprint and just kind of finding things out, you know, after the deadlines, or just being kind of like in the unknown of, you know, I had never heard about this, or like, how do you fill out FAFSA? What's the point of FAFSA? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us had a similar issue with the blueprint. Me being a first generation Japanese, my parents obviously didn't go to school here, so it was just me and my older sister. And unfortunately, I didn't really talk to my older sister when I was younger, so I was kind of on my own when it came to undergrad. I didn't quite understand the importance of a GPA. I think Carl or Aaron, you talked about that earlier, but yeah, I kind of did my own thing. Fortunately, I come from a family that's pretty well off, so I didn't have to file for any kind of FAFSA or scholarships or anything like that. My parents paid for all my undergrad, all my living expenses, all my rent, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I did work during undergrad, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to have spending money. I wanted to be able to, in essence, I mean, I felt guilty still taking money from my parents for a quote unquote allowance, but I wanted to have my own spending money where I could spend it to, you know, buy things that I didn't really need, but I still wanted. In essence, that kind of gave me a little insight on the importance of, you know, understanding monetary value. You know, going out and buying $200 sneakers. If my parents gave me $200 for it, I wouldn't bat an eye. You know, whereas if I'm looking at my paycheck, I'm like, dude, I worked an entire week and my paycheck's $800, then I'm like, oh, that's like 2 days worth of work right there that I'm dropping on $200 shoes. So then kind of puts things into perspective a little better. But I mean, one big regret I have is, you know, I didn't look for scholarship opportunities. I just assumed that since my family was well off, I didn't have to, look for other means to help my parents pay for it. Being selfish as I was when I was 18 years old. Looking back, I mean, you Google something like scholarships followed by whatever ethnicity, whatever race, whatever subgroup you can fall under. Literally just Google scholarship followed by that. In my case, it'll be Japanese National Scholarship or something like that. There is literally Google pages that like 10 pages worth of scholarship that you can apply to that I never took advantage of. And I read a stat a couple years back where, I mean, millions of dollars in scholarship money go unused because people just straight out don't apply to them, So take advantage of it. If you're someone that needs financial means or assistance, to be able to pay for schools, then go ahead and apply. And, worst comes to worst, they say no, and you spend a couple hours applying to it and, go on, move on, and try to find another one.
Yeah, Sato, that's a great point as far as the scholarships. Like a lot of people don't apply for scholarships. They think they don't have a chance, or they feel like there's a better candidate than they are. It's essentially like the lottery. I mean, you can't win the lottery if you don't play. Although your odds might be a little higher with scholarships. But
I think this also highlights how you have 4 people here with different hats as far as like their financial aid approach. And we're all, in PA school, perhaps with different burdens, but at the same time, like, backgrounds vary, and, don't ever think just because you don't have the means, whether it's just, financial or whatever other resources you lack, there is a way to get to the goal, whatever that may be.
Yeah. All right, just to harp on one thing that Aaron said earlier, I forgot to mention, the whole prestige hunting that he said for undergrad. I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what college you went to. It doesn't really matter what PA school you go to. To be honest, I mean, a PA is a PA at the end of the day. Undergrad degree is an undergrad degree at the end of the day. I mean, I felt like I had a lot of pressure in high school coming from a pretty well-known high school in San Diego, where we sent 8, 9 kids, maybe even more than that, to Ivy League schools every single year. We sent 50-something kids to UCLA my senior year. We sent 50-something kids to UC Berkeley. We sent all these the crazy amount of my graduating class was 1,000-something kids, but we sent so many kids to prestigious universities that we grew up thinking if you didn't go to the UCLAs, the top 25 programs in the country, you were one of the dumb kids or you were a failure, and that was a toxic environment to grow up in. And the reality is it doesn't matter. There's people from all different universities, right. I mean, plenty of universities that I don't even know where they are, to be honest with you. And it just goes to show you that, it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you get good grades, you follow through, you're dedicated. That's what matters more in the end than the name that's written on the top of your degree.
Dude, 100%. Like one of the best life lessons that my football coach in high school told us was it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you end, it matters where you finish, right? And so the pressure of A, being in a magnet program, B, being in a program or at a school that's so nationally well known for our athletic scholarships and stuff like that. Like people were getting full rides to UCLA, Stanford, Cal and stuff. And then people from my magnet program, majority of the people got into UCLA, Cal, Stanford, UC Irvine and stuff. And then me and one other guy went to UC Riverside, right? And at the time, UC Riverside was known as UCR, UC rejects, right? We were the kids who got rejected by all the other UCs. And, it sucked, but at the same time, I loved my experience there. I don't regret it one bit. And like what my coach said, it didn't matter where you start, it matters where you end. And the other guy who went to UCR with me, bro, he's a PhD student in I don't even know, pretty much astrophysics right now. And I'm it didn't matter that he didn't go to, a top prestigious school. And then, I got into PA school as well as some of my other classmates who went to Cal or other programs, so it really doesn't matter where you go to school.
Yeah. Whether it's UPenn or UPenn, at the end of the day, the crazy thing is, all right, so sometimes when you do go to those prestigious, I can't even say the name. They know I ain't go. a prestigious school. Sometimes they may have more resources, right? But at the end of the day, it's all what you do with those resources,
Facts, bro.
right? And one thing that this pandemic is showing is that maybe a little different for like our specialties is that if it results in you getting online training, it really doesn't matter. You still have the same criteria that these schools have to follow. Still the same material. Again, it's just what you're going to do with that. How you're going to take that material to the next level. In our case, how you're going to use that material to go save a life. So that was definitely a great point you brought up. Oh, and another thing too, because for some people, they might have messed up their first year, or they might have jumped right into a 4-year university, and it just might not have been mentally there. There's nothing wrong with going to a community college as well. If that fits your mold, essentially, if that's where you are, by any means, go that route. Get to where you need to be educationally, get your prereqs out, then apply to a 4-year school and keep it pushing. And then also you'll save some money as well. But there's many different routes and options.
Right. I mean, there's no shame in dropping out, taking a year off, taking 2 years off, whatever you need to do to get yourself straight again. And then, go either community college and then transfer into somewhere that you feel more comfortable in, or an environment you feel better in. I feel like a lot of people when they're 18 years old, first thing they want to do is get far away from home as possible. If they go across the country, they go somewhere else. And, as an 18-year-old, I mean, I got into school that was 20 minutes away from my house versus a school that's 2 hours away. I was like, well, I'm going to the one 2 hours away because I wanted to be further away from my parents. And so sometimes we make rash decisions when we're younger. And, there's really no shame in dropping out, reevaluating where you are, where your priorities lie, and then starting all over again.
Right. Yep. Take your time. And that's another thing that these programs are looking at. I mean, they're not just looking at the school you went to, and they're not just looking at the grades you might have got while you was at that school. They're looking at you as a full picture, So they're looking at, okay, if you took a gap, just, explain what happened. I mean, plenty of people have, different reasons, and they're going to respect that, but they're going to look at the whole picture, which can help in your advantage. All right, so we'll go to another question. During college, you guys participating in any extracurricular activities?
I was pretty active in just like extracurricular stuff. I was very, and still am very passionate about the advancement and promotion of Latino culture. So because my high school didn't offer me much of a cultural experience, I decided that would be something I would focus on, an undergrad. So I was very involved with the Latino club on campus. I ended up joining a fraternity that is basically primarily comprised of Latinos. Aside from that, I also was active with some sports. I would play soccer in the intramural league. I would play basketball. So definitely just very involved in things that I thought would be a good, creative outlet or a good way to kind of stay focused or help stay focused with my academic career because, on the political science track, I would say it was something that I wanted to, the reason I even did political science was because I wanted to go to law school, not necessarily because I was interested in political science. So for me, extracurriculars were how I really stayed, focused and interested.
Aaron?
Yeah, bro. So from high school, I did a lot of like hip hop dance and playing football, obviously. And so when I got to UCR, it was like kind of picking between the two. It was either joining the hip hop dance team that practices to like 1, 2 in the morning, or playing intramural where we had weekly practices, but it was still fun or whatever. And so I went with the football route, and that was kind of a huge component of my undergrad career. Played all 5 years, got a few injuries, broke my nose, got cleated in the chin. We had practices every week, but at the same time, like I made some of the best friends that I ever met. I wouldn't have ever got to know them. We got to represent our university twice in a couple regional tournaments, like at ASU and UCLA. So it was a great experience, and I learned a lot about teamwork and relying on other people to meet one common goal, and at the same time also stepping up when it's necessary, and also taking a step back and trusting your teammates when it was also necessary. But aside from that, went on a couple of medical missions with Global Medical Brigades to Honduras. Was a part of our Student Alumni Association, and currently am a part of our Alumni Association. At UCR, we didn't really have that many Cambodian students, but I was pretty connected with the Cambodian students down here in Long Beach. So we did a couple of projects together and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, my time was pretty much full from intramurals, working, and just classes in general.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think I'm the same with all the other guys. I mean, I don't look like an athlete now in my elder age. Um, but back in the day, I used to be a little thinner, a little more athletic looking, a little more sleek. I grew up playing soccer, played tennis throughout high school, played golf pretty much my whole entire life since I was 3. Not, the epitome of athleticism by any means, but, it gets me out there walking. But yeah, I mean, sports definitely, like Aaron said, brings people together. You depend on people. It's teamwork, it's camaraderie, stuff like that. And that's something that's really important when you work in healthcare. There's no real me, for as cliche as it sounds, there's no really me in a healthcare team. You have to depend on other people. You have to trust other people. You have to rely on other people in order to be able to do what's right for the patient. So, athletics definitely taught me a lot about that. Similar to Carlos, I did join a Japanese American student association when I was at UCLA. LA, or Southern California, and actually California in general, has a pretty large Japanese American population. And that's something I didn't know much about because I grew up in Virginia, I grew up in Ireland, and I grew up in San Diego. And for the most part, I didn't have that many Japanese people around me until I came back to San Diego. Some 20 years ago now. But, just being able to reconnect with, Japanese Americans, even though they're not the same as Japanese, it was still, interesting to see where our culture overlaps and, what things have, kind of deviated from one another, I guess is another way to put it. So that was interesting. We did a lot of cultural events, hosted culture nights, try to educate the population, try to, especially with the whole internment camp situation that happened during World War II, not to let people forget that ever happened. We're not trying to hold anyone, necessarily hold people accountable and blame anyone for it, but we want people to never forget that it happened so that it never happens again in the future. So there was that. And, one thing I just wish we had were these pre-PA clubs that I've noticed seem to be, appearing all throughout the country, whether in undergrad schools, I see them in community colleges. There's these amazing resources where, a group of people come together, and I don't know how big they are. But, they have people like guest speakers, stuff like that. I know, Aaron, you've done a bunch of those. Carlos, you said you had an invite for an event coming up soon, where you get to talk to undergrads and, let them know, hey, basically what we're doing here. And you get to do it, at a more individual scale where you get to talk to people and, let people know that there's help out there for you if you ever need it.
My first year at college, that 1 year I did at that one school, I lived on campus, so I was a little more active, probably active in the wrong reasons, but I was active in the extracurricular activities. But I joined a couple diversity groups like NAACP, played some intramural sports. And then when I got into the other colleges, I was more of a commuter. So majority of my time was more so with my work in the military and stuff like that. But I still try to be, as active as I could. Did some basketball, some football. I even joined a ping pong tournament once. So it was kind of like really random. Like we had this game room at Temple, and I would just see them like playing ping pong going crazy. I'm like, oh, that's kind of dope. I could do that. Joined the tournament. I don't even think I made it to the next round. Like they back spins, all that type of stuff. I'm like, what the heck? So that's why I was like, yeah, that's not gonna be for me.
hey, we're gonna have to go to Carlos and play ping pong over there.
I know we were playing doubles and stuff. Yeah. Now I try to dive into the clubs. They had a pre-PA, and at this time I was between pre-PA and pre-med. I still didn't, because I didn't know much about a PA at that time. So all I knew pretty much was the medical route. So I was like, all right, I'm in between both of these. I'm seeing like so much overlap. And then at the same time, when I started getting my medical experience in the Army and working under PAs and doc, I'm like, yeah, I'm leaning more towards PA. I did take the MCATs and things of that nature prior, but once I started actually getting experience shadowing, I was like, okay, yeah, this is more for me. So I started taking the pre-PA club a little more serious. But that was kind of like in its infancy as well. Now they're doing much better, But yeah, so that was pretty much my experience there.
I think a lot of the.
So
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
think
ahead, bro.
a lot of personal development and personal growth, as far as like connections you'll have for the rest of your life, comes out of these extracurricular activities, and I think that definitely highlights the
Definitely.
importance of it.
100%, bro. I would say the last thing, just because it's kind of fresh. There was a pre-PA group on Facebook. Somebody was asking about one of the CASPA questions about being on academic probation and, getting disciplined in that sense or whatever, and asking, do we disclose it? What do we disclose? Stuff like that. And my response was, well, I sent them what I put in my, CASPA answer, and I said, hey, straight up, I got put on academic probation my second year because I got a 2.19 GPA or something like that for like 2 quarters and got, a couple D's and F's or whatever, or like a D and an F. But, bounced back and got a 2.95 the next quarter, got off of academic probation. And then from that point on, never got anything lower than a B minus, like my fourth year, fifth year, and post bac years, and even graduated on dean's list and chancellor's list from undergrad. So pretty much my response to them was like, hey, own your mistakes. You messed up, but at the same time, those poor grades don't define you. That academic, disciplinary action doesn't define you. So don't let your past define your future and prevent you from reaching your goals. So just own it and
Yeah,
keep
no,
it
I
pushing,
definitely agree with
keep it
that. I
moving.
mean, I was
So
on academic probation by I think my third quarter of my first year. I had a 1.9 something. And I was like, that's fine. They're not going to kick me out of here. I got on academic probation the second time. I was like, they're still not going to kick me out of here. The third time I got on academic probation, they're like, yo, you got to come see a counselor. And I was like, oh, shoot, maybe they will kick me out of here. So it took me 3 times for them to, really take it seriously. But yeah, I mean, just 1 quarter, bad grades, 2 quarters of bad grades. It really, I mean, it's just like a little hiccup on the road. You can definitely recover from it. You can definitely do better. Just just find out what you did wrong and then correct that mistake and then keep on going.
Yeah, I think what you do about it speaks louder than whatever tripped you up
Right.
or whatever
Absolutely.
experience you had.
Yeah, no one's perfect. I was on academic probation as well. I think it was my first semester. That infamous first year of college I keep speaking of. um, but a lot of these programs actually want to see, they look at everything, look at the full picture. So they kind of want to see, an upwards trend. They definitely don't want to see a downward trend, unless you can really explain it. But somehow you're gonna have to bounce back up because there's still requirements and minimum GPAs. So they definitely, they want to see that upward trend. Sometimes even that constant trend, but for real, that upward trend, it really shows maturity. So that kind of leads into our MRP pros for the day. It's not giving up.
Time for this episode's MRP, the Minority Rapport Pearl. These are valuable tips from the Minority Report that are relevant to this episode's topic of discussion.
Our MRP pros for the day is not giving up. All right, so you guys heard my story today. There were plenty of times I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I always kept that goal, that end goal as the focus. I knew what my life could be, and I wasn't going to let anything get in between that. Back to what I said earlier, I got rejected by Drexel. Now when when it was time to apply for grad programs this last time around, I got accepted into 3 of the top 10 programs. And guess which one I chose, Drexel. So don't give up. What you guys got to say about that, Carlos?
I mean, I'd say that definitely came full circle. I think most of us have good examples of what not giving up can result in, whether it's our parents or some other loved ones. Um, so I totally believe in that. I let myself distance my belief that I should, that I belonged in medicine after my undergrad experience. And, as fate would have it, I came back and am now about to graduate, from PA school. So definitely don't give up. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think all four of us are a testament to not giving up. We got Carl, you talked about your infamous 1 year stint, and going in the military, coming back, still persevering despite coming from a background that didn't advocate for you to go to undergrad. Period. Right. Aaron, same thing. Started off maybe pre-med, then went and started making films and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, realized that his heart was still in medicine. Came back, didn't give up, got in on a second time. Carlos, same thing. Started off in with a medicine background, then went like lawyer, poli-sci, stuff like that. Realized, hey, this isn't what I want. I really want to go medicine. Came back again. And in my case, it was 6 years of applying. I mean, we all have a different background, but the underlying theme is none of us gave up. When things got tougher, we just doubled down and strove to achieve what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, man. Shoot, I mean, again, like applying definitely shows that we didn't give up. We could have easily folded, after that first cycle of getting rejections or whatever it may be, right? Of us came from different backgrounds and stuff like that. And, with Carl, you're talking about growing up in the streets of Philly and stuff like that. Like, bro, ask anybody about a Cambodian male from Long Beach. They're probably going to give you the answer that, oh, he probably gangbangs or whatever it is, right? And just kind of stepping away from that status quo, that stereotype, bro, like that to me was like my testament of like not giving up. I didn't want to be part of that, demographic. I didn't want to represent my community in that sense. I got plenty of acquaintances who went that route, and like they're able to get out of that life, so they didn't give up. But one of my lyrics I wrote a while back, it was like, I came out of Riverside with the cards that was dealt, placed every bet on myself, and pretty much like, despite it seemed like the world was against me and like all the obstacles I was coming against, and like all of us, we've all had different obstacles and challenges, but we didn't give up. So we just like Asada said, we doubled down on ourselves. We just went all in, placed our bet, and now look at us, and we still got a ways to go. And I'm not saying it's going to be the easy life from here on now. I'm sure we're going to hit plenty more challenges and obstacles, but as long as you don't give up, like you're still winning at life,
Yeah, you can never lose by betting on yourself. All right, guys. So that was pretty much the nooks and crannies for this episode. So before we get out of here, everybody tell them where they can pretty much reach you guys at.
My name is Sato, and you can reach me on Instagram at hardworkpaysoff29.
My name is Carlos Cano, and you can reach me on Instagram at thefit.pa.s.
My name is Aaron, and you can reach me at Aaron Anchor.
My name is Carl, and you can reach me on Instagram at whitecoatblack.
They gon' know I did it from the start.